It's hard for me to believe AI artists and the way we think of recording artists would ever be anything more than a tool.
Hi, I'm Jason Manship, host of Authentic and Agentic. Every week on this show, we break down what's happening in AI and what it means for how we work, lead, and live. Join me for a human-focused conversation that keeps you ahead of the curve. This is the Authentic and Agentic podcast on the IBJ Media Network. Welcome, everyone, to this week's edition of Authentic and Agentic. I'm your host, Jason Manship. We are going to break down some of the biggest developments shaping AI, tech, and society, and really why I think you should care about them. This one's kind of fun because I've got a couple of strong opinions from people who are living in the AI world every day baked into this news segment. So let's get into it. First up, someone that you all are familiar with, the fellow named Elon Musk, founder, CEO of a handful of companies, including Tesla and SpaceX and others. He sat down at Davos this week with the BlackRock CEO on stage and did an interview about AI. At the World Economic Forum, he made a surprise appearance. I think it was his first ever at the event. But he sat down, talked about AI, robotics, and the economy. And there were a few things that really stood out to me as it relates specifically to AI. The first, I think there's a new buzzword we're going to start hearing and using that he brought up. I don't know that I've heard it before, or at least not used repeatedly, but he said it a lot, which is ubiquitous AI. And he defined it as AI virtually everywhere. It's embedded in everything, in technology and infrastructure and robotics and even in economic systems. And he argued that if AI did what he sees it doing, and starts to make things cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and robots become more widespread, that he actually believes there's an opportunity for an explosion in the global economy that might be bigger than anything we've ever seen before. And so that's a much larger conversation, one that I'd love to talk to an economist about and get feedback and perspective on. But Elon believes that, as labor costs come down, as production costs come down, it becomes cheaper to produce things. Therefore, in theory, it becomes cheaper to buy and sell things, and changes the entire economy in a way that we've never, ever seen before. And so we'll see how it all plays out. This isn't a discussion about future economic trends, more about the fact that listen for the term ubiquitous AI. I think you're going to start hearing it a lot. One of the other things he said that I found super interesting was he said that as early as next year, maybe end of this year, but as early as next year, he believes that AI will surpass any single human's intelligence. Any single human. And by 2030, AI should be smarter than all of humanity combined. He said 2030, 2031. Now, Elon is notorious at being optimistic, maybe even a little conspiratorial, maybe a little, headline seeking. So I don't know how much I believe those exact dates or numbers, but I find it super fascinating that if we think we're moving that fast, it tells you the people that are building this tech, that are working on it behind the scenes like he is, think it's moving faster than they even thought it was going to. It feels like AI is moving faster than the people building it anticipated as close as a year ago, right? That's not even like long stretch. I mean, this is just like looking forward. It's so hard to predict where things are going to be because the world is moving so fast. And on that note, he talked about robots. And so, as you probably know, Tesla has been working on an Optimus robot. These are humanoid robots that walk around and do tasks. And when asked about a timeline for it, he said that Tesla aims to start selling these to the public by the end of 2027. Think about that for a second. That's less than 24 months from now. I mean, that's wild to think that we may have within 24 months. That's not 20 years. That's 24 months. We may have robots walking amongst us doing tasks as humans do. I think this is a big deal. And I think it's going to be a big deal. I think it could be the biggest deal, right? Because right now robots are really heavy in, machinery and automation and building and industrial. But we're not really seeing them in everyday life outside of a Roomba or maybe a mower that mows the yard. We're going to see this just take off. Now, there's some significant engineering and production breakthroughs that have to happen, but I think it's coming. And I think I align with Elon on this. I don't know about the timeline. Again, I think he's notoriously optimistic, but I mean, my Tesla that he built and designed drives itself every single day. And so I have faith in the fact that this is coming. It's not going to be perfect right out of the gate. There's going to be a long, arduous process to get this stuff moving, but it is coming faster than you and I are ready for it. And I think that AI isn't just smart. I think it's everywhere. I think it's going to reshape labor. I think it's going to reshape the economy. And I think it's going to reshape daily life. And robots, I think, are going to start appearing in homes within the next few years. And so, as an AI optimist, one who leans in these moments, sign me up. I will get in line, put in my down payment right now to get in line to have an optimist in my house. I would love to have additional help with the chores and the things that we need as the technology continues to evolve and grow. Story 2 for today is about AI in the classroom. So last week we had a chance to talk to Don Wettrick about innovation in the classroom and some of the frustrations he's seeing. In doing some of that research, I came across some major advancements that are happening, and I think this is really interesting. So the classroom, I think, is becoming one of the major frontier areas for AI, which makes sense, really, right? Because you're teaching a generation of people. If you think back to Microsoft and the growth of Microsoft, the thing that they did was they gave computers to classrooms, to schools all across the country originally, and under the premise that you use Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel and Microsoft PowerPoint, right? And they realized that if you can get teachers and students who are growing up to use Microsoft Office, that when they get into their job place, they're going to use Microsoft Office. And so I think a lot of these big tech companies are playing that out in today's environment with AI. And I think that they are racing, it's like a land race basically, to try to get into the classroom. And so, one of the things I might say is whoever becomes the default AI for schools could very well shape an entire generation, how they learn, how they study, how they interact with AI throughout life. I think Google's leaning in really hard, but I'm going to talk about a few others here also. So if you think about it, like, and a lot of the schools I still talk to here in Indiana still see AI as a cheating tool. Now, if you read any of the stuff on a national level, the economies, the groups, the forward-thinking communities are not thinking about it that way. They're thinking about it as a way to advance and grow and get better, embracing it. And so the conversation I continuously have with educators is, sure, yes, it could be used as a cheating tool, but it could also be used as a tool to, the Iron Man suit, right? That could level up people if we can learn how to use it effectively and responsibly. And so I do think you're going to see that resistance fade over time. I think you're going to see more and more people realize that the power is better than the problem. And you're going to see educators leaning in. They're going to start to embrace it more as a learning tool rather than fighting it. I think that students are realizing that ignoring it won't prepare their students for the future and actually could leave them at a disadvantage. And I think that as you really kind of go up a step and think about what is the purpose of a school or administration, it's to empower these students to get an education to be in the job force. And so if I get out of college and everything that I do and touch is AI, ubiquitous AI, as Elon Musk calls it, then don't I need to bake that into my education? Don't I need to be teaching people how to use these tools? And I think that this shift, right, it takes time to develop because tech or education doesn't move instantly. But this shift has opened the door for some of these tech giants. I think that they're competing for maybe what could be called AI choice in education. And so here's what I'm seeing play out. So Anthropic announced it's bringing AI tools and training to 100,000 educators in 63 countries. They partnered up with a group called Teach for All, which reaches over 1.5 million students. And what they're trying to do is position teachers as co-creators to help shape how tools evolve. And so they're setting these teachers up as co-architects that are building tools tailored to their own classrooms and shaping how Claude develops for education. I think that's really, really smart, right? Getting people to embrace and be your project champion internally will help these teachers get accustomed to it, use it, and teach others how to do it, right? And so I think that Anthropic's approach here is really, really smart. Google announced its most aggressive AI push into education. They have a few things that they've just recently announced. One, SAT practice test powered by Gemini. So they worked with Princeton Review to game plan for this. But imagine practicing for the SAT now using AI, right? Where it's going to learn and listen to what you don't know, how to teach you better, how to get you to understand these parts and get prepared for the SAT. I mean, you're going to see scores level up across the board for people that choose this super personalized, super individualized learning process for SAT scores. Notebook LM is getting integrated into some learning workflows, and they built out an AI-powered writing feedback program with groups like Khan Academy. And so they are actively working on partnerships with some of these institutions and groups that are plugged in at the school level. And they're attempting to leverage Gemini's AI to integrate with these places in a way that will plug Google squarely in the center of all of it. And then Microsoft does what Microsoft does, free AI training, premium software for educators and students, trying to help educators get baked into AI at their level through Copilot and some of the ubiquitous AI that's baked into some of their Office products. And so they're actively trying to do it too. So I just wanted to bring all this up because I think it's worth remembering that this ed tech stuff isn't new, right? It's been happening for decades. Companies have been promising big transformations. Overall, I think if you talk to educators, results have been mixed. I mean, it's nice to have computers in the classroom. It's nice to have tablets in the classroom. A lot of good, a lot of bad that comes with that. But I think the biggest thing here is the resource gaps. I think AI is powerful. Educators, I think currently, at least in Indiana, are pretty skeptical. And I think that skepticism is slowing things down. And so if I were an educator, I would try to solve for how do I use this stuff to get my kids better equipped for the future they're coming to versus that the world that they're in today. Because as we're going to talk about here in just a second, and hopefully as you've picked up in this conversation, by listening to this podcast, the world is moving very fast. The world that these students in K-12 are going to come into in the job market isn't going to look anything like the world that they're in right now. And so I think that schools have to lean in. They have to adopt AI. I think there's questions about privacy and data. I think there's questions about all the different components that come into that. But please, 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 educators, lean in, right? Try to understand how to solve these problems, right? And the big tech companies are coming for you, right? They're absolutely leaning in and trying to offer you anything and everything they can to get adoption, to get to win the race, to dominate that classroom. And so I think it's a generational opportunity for these big tech companies. I think you're going to see stock market prices change based on who wins the classroom. And I think importantly, you're going to see students level up at a speed they've never done before. My final story today isn't really a story as much as it's a kind of a synopsis of something that really hit me when I read it. So Mike Allen, who's I think founder and CEO of Axios, used to be at Politico way back in the day, had a very popular political newsletter. But he started Axios, and I just absolutely love the way they do news there. Mike has been covering AI for years, and may be one of the most well-equipped humans at understanding all the practical components of how these pieces fit together. He's a veteran journalist. He's been around for a long time, but he interacts with everybody from the White House to Congress to CEOs of the biggest companies. He's the guy that's connected to all these different places. And when he talks, I listen because he has a very interesting perspective on the world. And so what happened last week, he wrote a letter to his family about AI. And through that letter, his wife and probably some members of his Axios team encouraged him to actually share that letter publicly. And so I want to address some of the things he told his wife and kids, because I think you need to hear this. I think this is something that, again, this is someone who is sitting at the forefront of AI. He's not building with AI per se. He's not financially motivated by building frontier models. He is just covering it as a reporter. And this is what he's saying. He's saying that, quote, AI will upend work and life more profoundly than the internet or possibly even electricity. And he says these changes are not going to hit in years, but in months. And he urged his family to embrace AI with curiosity, discernment, and daily use rather than fear and avoidance. Same thing I would tell educators trying to teach students. So he says that AI should augment deep thinking and learning and not replace books or critical thought, that different models have different strengths, He specifically called out ChatGPT as conversational, Gemini as analytical, and Claude as productive. He says that AI could make traditional entry level jobs obsolete, which we've been talking about for a while, especially any of those jobs that involve routine knowledge work. And what I thought was kind of cool was he encouraged each of his children individually to find ways to use AI to amplify their unique gifts and to not let it diminish their humanity. So he actually wrote to each of his children individually and said, this is how I would use it if I were you. And I think that's really interesting because it's not a one size fits all. I think it is an equalizer. I think it lets us level up, right? Small companies can fight with big companies because of these kinds of tools. But I do think understanding how to apply it to your personal life and what you are good at and what your unique gift is, I think is a really interesting perspective. And so I liked that. So I thought his message was a call to action and probably a cautionary reflection. I think he's urging awareness, but also strongly encouraging engagement and saying, you need to lean in here, right? AI is going to reshape our society, and to his terms, months, not years. We just talked about how humanoid robots are going to be present in 2 years, how by the end of this year, potentially, AI will be smarter than any individual human. And by 2030, it's smarter than the entire human race. Guys, we're not messing around here. This is the stuff we have to be talking about. And so I'm going to keep bringing up stories like this each week. We're going to have a lot of fun talking about it, and we're going to try to just keep us all front of mind of what's going on here, right? I mean, the world is moving so fast. My job is to just triage all the noise and give you guys stuff that's valuable. So that's going to wrap up our top news for the week. But before we get to our interview, I do want to call out a few upcoming events that are happening. So first, students, if there are any students listening, please listen closely. Cummins has partnered with TechPoint's Extern program to launch an AI challenge where students are going to compete to win thousands of dollars. And they're going to work with people right inside of Cummins. So you've got a Fortune 200 company, teams of students, and you're going to be building with AI. It's great. It's practical. It's hands-on experience. And I talk to students who say, I can't seem to get a foot in the door. Well, here's your chance. You want to get a foot in the door at a Fortune 200 company, or you want to put something on a resume that says, I'm really good at this, hire me, go sign up. Registration's in on February 11th. If you're a student listening, go. If you're know a student that could fit in, send this to them. Tell them about it. techpoint.org. It is the community or the AI challenge powered by Cummins and Extern. Registrations end February 11th. So please tell them. This could literally be a career or life-changing moment for a young person in your life. Send it to them. And then with that, on February 3rd, I'm going to be leading a panel discussion about AI at TechPoint's Community Connect event. So the event is called Building Indiana's Human and Digital Foundations for the Age of AI. And that fits about dang perfectly right inside of Authentic and Agentic, right? So we're going to be building Indiana's human and digital foundations for the age of AI. It's February 3rd. It's from 10 to 3 at IU Health in downtown Indianapolis. Join us at this event. Their goal is to equip employers, educators, and community leaders with clarity and tools to accelerate AI. They're trying to help with AI adoption and trying to help close the people experience gap where people are, have different experiences with AI. Some are hesitant, reluctant, and some are leaning in hard. And so go to techpoint.org to register. I'd love to see you there. We're going to attempt to record a live podcast episode from there. And so as I'm doing the panel discussion, Josh from my team is going to join us from Co-Captain Creative, who does the production work for this show, is going to join us. And we are going to live record that and turn that into a future podcast episode. So anyway, check it out. February 3rd, sign up at techpoint.org. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to play TechPoint's ad, which should repeat some of these same details because they're promoting this event February 3rd. Then we'll get to our discussion with musician and music executive, John Loeffler.
AI is transforming work, but too many organizations are stuck between potential and practice. Join TechPoint on February 3rd at Community Connect presented by IU Health, where Indiana's employers, innovators, and educators will come together to tackle AI adoption and the experience gap head-on. You'll hear what's working, connect to trusted resources, and leave with insights you can actually use. Reserve your spot now at techpoint.org/communityconnect.
I am excited to get to this discussion, but I wanted to give a little background on how it came to be. And so I was talking to a good friend of mine, Bob Ellsworth. I've known Bob for I don't know, a decade plus probably at this point. We actually worked together on some stuff, some political tech way back in the day. And so I've known him for, like I said, a long time. Bob is a super interesting guy. So he is kind of one of those guys that's plugged into 50 different things and has worked on all sorts of stuff. Just a cruel, storied career. We've maintained a long-term relationship. I think we both find each other super fascinating. And so Bob and I reconnected, I don't know, a few months ago. And he was showing me his tool he's been building. So one of the things Bob has done historically is polling. For trying to understand sentiment and sentiment analysis and polling. And so over the last year plus, he's been working on a product that uses AI in these moments. And I don't want to disclose too much because I don't know what I'm allowed to talk about, but he was demoing the product to me. We were having a lot of fun talking about it. And at the end of the conversation, he was complimenting me on the podcast and, asked if there was anything he could do to help. And I said, you know what, one person or group of people I'd like to talk to would be someone in the music space, someone who is a creative human who maybe grew up or knows the music industry that could, I don't know, speak into it. Like, how is AI impacting their creativity? How is it changing that world and that landscape? And so he said, I got a guy for you, a good friend of mine, a guy named John Loeffler. I'm like, okay, I don't know who that is, but I'd love to talk to him. And so he goes, yeah, you know some of his work. And I was digging around a little bit and yeah, I definitely know some of his work. And so if you've listened to this podcast at all, I own a board game store. And one of the largest product categories we have is a product called Pokémon, which is a trading card game, but it's also, anime style TV cartoon. It's, it's just a massive, massive, massive brand that came over from Japan. And so what I learned was that John actually partnered up and was one of the writers and original composers of the Pokemon theme song. I'm like, oh, well, that guy's had a pretty interesting career for sure. But I also found that he, has gone from that to executive level stuff to running his own thing. And so super interesting backstory. We'll get into that in the interview. But I'm really grateful for this opportunity to talk to John. He is someone who has seen the industry change and evolve. He believes there are parts of it that are broken today. And he thinks AI is going to have a dramatic impact in that process. And so join me for my conversation with John Loeffler. Hi, John. Good to see you.
Hey, Jason, how you doing?
Delightful. So first question for you, because we met digitally via email, and I read about your bio, read about your background. How do you pronounce your last name?
Loeffler.
Loeffler. Okay, I didn't want to get it wrong. So John Loeffler. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. We got introduced through a friend of mine, a friend of ours, actually, Bob Ellsworth, who I just love. I worked with him many, many years ago. Great guy. So he told me about your background and shared some of your story. I told him I was looking to talk to somebody that was in the music side of the business that had some perspective around AI specifically. And he goes, I got just the guy for you.
Well, funny, Bob and I have been talking about maybe doing a podcast. This was in its infancy in terms of the thought process, but no one in the music business is really talking about the kind of train wreck that's happening in the record business and watching revenues decline, royalties decline, especially because of streaming. And 80% of people walking down the street would have no idea that most artists are struggling. And no one's talking about it. So I said, let's start a podcast called Let's Talk About It.
Yeah, I think people want to hear about it. I
think so too. I mean, everybody loves music. It's more popular than ever, but it's broken. The model's broken because people don't buy records, basically, and streaming income is a pittance compared to record sales.
Sales, yeah, makes total sense. Well, let's we're going to start with your early career, talk through kind of your background, and then we'll get into that specifically. I'm very excited to hear your perspective on what's broken in that industry and how people need to be thinking about it, especially in the world of AI. I mean, everything's moving a million miles an hour. Right?
I know.
Just wild. So you started your career in music, composing jingles,
Yep.
a lot of commercial music. You did some stuff for TV and other places. But for people who have never seen that side of the industry, what's it really like day to day? I mean, you don't just magically come up with a jingle.
I mean,
how's that play?
I was an arrogant recent college graduate coming to New York. All I wanted to do was be a performer and a rock star, basically. And I didn't know how to start. And I wasn't a good enough musician that I would walk into New York City and suddenly everybody opens the door. So I had to kind of get a job as a waiter, and I had to like start like making the rounds and finding out, what do you do? How do you make money as a musician? Because actually, when I came to New York, it never crossed my mind how to make a living as a musician. I just knew I wanted to come to New York and be a musician and be a
Yeah.
songwriter. So as a waiter, I started meeting more and more people in the advertising business. And one day, one guy said, I happen to be a director of TV commercials, and maybe I can help you because the guys that do the music for all the commercials that I work on seem to be doing very well. And they were nice to me. I met with the company. It turns out one of the most prestigious jingle companies in New York, and they were doing all the music for Coca-Cola. Like I like to teach the world. I like to teach the world to sing and all that stuff. And they let me hang out as kind of a intern while I was continuing serving hamburgers at a local burger joint. And eventually, I started writing little short ditties and tunes, which I didn't realize, but I happen to have a talent for, making really catchy little, you know, whistleable songs. And I started, it really became almost a 20-year career of doing music for commercials. And then that segued into being a music director for an ad agency. And then I started doing music for TV series and sitcoms and sports shows. And a lot of people don't know about that world because they only think about records as where how people make a living as a musician. But at the time was a very vibrant community of singers and musicians and writers and producers, and everybody was making a lot of money. Everybody was in a good mood. It was a wonderful time.
Well, I want to talk about that world because you're
But
right.
like all things, it comes to an end.
That's right.
Like all things, it comes to an end.
That's exactly right. But I want to talk about that because, I mean, I think we're all fascinated by it, right? I mean, even if you don't understand it, I mean, it's not, playing Madison Square Garden and going on, the Era Tour and all these sorts of things, but you certainly can build a great life. And I mean, there's a huge opportunity there. I mean, it's neat because we can all think of theme songs to shows or jingles, like you mentioned, the Coca-Cola one that you just kind of remember, right? And it kind of plays into it. And so I imagine in that world, though, it's like fast moving, so probably super competitive, deadline driven, outcome focused. How does a young guy coming out of bartending, right? How does that environment shape the way you kind of approach music or maybe the opportunity that's presented in front of you? Because it feels similar, John, as I hear that story, to like an aspiring actor or actress out in Hollywood that wants to make it, right? And then they get their break, they get their chance. And now guess what? It's like the dog that caught the bus. Now you actually have to go do it.
Now you got to do it. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was protected because in the beginning, you are a schlump in the studio. You're the guy getting the coffee, and you're the guy kind of setting up the microphones in the studio for the real producers and the real musicians. But pretty quickly, it became clear to me even that I had a pretty good instinct about it. So whenever there'd be a new jingle assignment, which would be several a week, it wasn't like happening once every month. It was like we were doing 3, 4, 5 sessions a week, and they let you submit. Usually there'd be some lyric idea from the ad agency saying, we're singing about Jif Peanut Butter today, or we're singing about American Airlines, and here's the tagline, any ideas? So, and I actually happened to come up with some really catchy ideas from the very beginning, and they're going, well, damn, why don't you keep doing what you're doing? We need you to set up the microphones, but maybe you can help us a little bit more in these song sessions, and maybe you can also sit in the studio and you can help us run the session as the guy that stays late and ends up finishing the mix and ends up closing the studio. And I was fine with that, and I just started learning. And it turns out at this time there weren't more than 100 people in the United States, maybe 125 people in the whole country that were actually in the business of writing and producing music for TV commercials. And every commercial on television in the mid-late 70s and 80s had a musical theme to it. It was just like you had to have something to kind of help make it memorable. And I'm a singer, so I also got to sing on the jingles. So I was being paid as a performer, singer, also being paid as a writer, and it became a very beautiful thing. and eventually let me build my own studio and put together a little music company myself, so we could be available to do this. And it was a great run. It was a great run.
That's awesome. What a cool story. Very, very cool story. Congratulations on that success too. Now, I want to pivot to maybe one of the things you're probably most known for. And it's funny because most people probably, the general John Q. public probably doesn't know this. But those that do definitely know it. And so you wrote a theme song for a hit at the time. I think it was more Japanese, Moving to America. Game or show, I guess it was a cartoon that is now turned into board games, card games, a whole, video
Yeah,
game.
behemoth. My God,
So
yeah.
Pokemon, right, which is the largest global intellectual property franchise of all time. For people that are listening that don't know this, Pokemon's brand value is bigger than Star Wars and Harry Potter combined. That is
Oh my God.
that is
I don't think I
nuts.
knew that either.
That is nuts.
That's crazy.
Right? So and you, John, the guy on the other end of this podcast, you wrote the theme song for the English version of Pokemon. Is that
Yeah.
tell me
But I did 3-4 albums worth of all the songs that ran in the show, and also oversaw and co-wrote all the underscore for 18 seasons.
that is
19
wild.
seasons, yeah.
All because you were bartending in New York, some guy found you, you went in, you performed,
That's
you
it.
did a great job, and
That's it.
turns out you can actually sing and write jingles that people like, and here you are.
I mean, the advertising thing helped me build a production company, and I was surrounded by 6 or 7 other great musicians and writers. And that's kind of how to survive. You had to always be doing a bunch of versions. So when the guys that got the rights to produce the pilot for the American version of Pokemon, they came to me and said, "We have no money. We're pitching this. Hopefully, Pokemon Japan likes us, and hopefully, we can find a broadcaster here in the States who would like to even do a show like this, because it was anime. It was a style that Americans weren't used to."
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, sure. I mean, like we're here in the studio every day anyway, so let us write some music and let's see what happens." And really and I had done music for a lot of shows and movies that went nowhere. And this happened to be one of those things that kind of stuck. And so we were off to the races. And before we knew, we were already doing the first and second season. And those seasons back then would be either 26 shows for the first season. And then eventually it started even doing 52 shows for a whole season. I mean, we were like cranking it out. And the themes and the songs, we just kept weaving into the shows during the season.
Oh, I've watched all of them, so I'm quite sure of that. I have a 10-year-old son who Pokemon is life, right? He loves it so much, and
There you go.
yeah, I get it. I know it. Let me ask this question. You said you'd done some stuff that didn't really take off, right? But you're producing and writing and singing. Did this one feel different when you were in the weeds working on Pokemon? Did it feel like, this one's going to happen, or it sounded like you were kind of hoping it might happen, not even really sure?
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, it's all teamwork. I mean, I was working with producers and the production company that was actually had the rights to make the show. They were smart guys.
Okay.
And I had done a couple other shows for them for NBC, and they weren't nearly as significant, but it was fun to work on. They were smart guys. And you just have to, when you come into New York City and you're kind of in the applied arts like I was, and when you're writing music for film or TV, you don't know what ad campaign is going to be a major ad campaign. You don't know what TV show is going to work, what sitcom is going to work. You just do it. And, you just hope that the odds are like some of them will stick. And that's kind of, 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 end up resonating enough that they stay around for a while. And in this part of the music business, the more it's on television, the more valuable it is. So if you're able to get your music on TV for a season or 2 or more,
or 18,
that's like a big home run, because you're getting paid every week as if you compose it from fresh, even if it was already written before, and you just kind of reconfigured it a little bit for the new show.
So you use the term applied, would you say applied arts or applied music?
Yeah, it's kind of applied arts, because it's not like you're sitting down and making an album.
Yeah.
Which is kind of really a significant piece of art. I mean, it's you're good at writing music, and you're good at kind of maybe helping to tell a story and evoking a certain emotion. But, I mean, I didn't write the lyrics. The lyrics were about the product, and or about the characters. And in Pokemon, I take a little more credit because we actually read the scripts and figured out who the characters were. And I know that the producers of the American show really wanted to change the texture of the show, because in Japan they just had kind of forgettable music. And they said, look, this is an opportunity. John's a songwriter, his team's all songwriters. We could actually do this, and a bunch of guys are willing to do it anyway. It was, and we didn't think more than that. We weren't thinking about what it was worth or not worth. It never crossed our mind, to tell you the truth. We were just
I love that so
making
much.
music.
I imagine, like, if you're an actor and you land something that's that nostalgic and that big, it really kind of becomes a set for life moment as an actor. As an applied musician, someone who's doing the applied arts, I think the term you use there. I mean, without getting into the deals or the dollars or whatever, I mean, does that change the kind of opportunities that you get? Does it change your career trajectory? Does it change how people in the industry look at you? I mean, do you
Yeah, I mean,
level up in that
I'll
moment?
give you an idea. So because of that, I ended up doing about 7 or 8 animation series. And I also started doing some more music for some of the networks. And I really focused at the time on sports music, and we were doing a lot of stuff for NBC Sports. And during that process, I met a very big publishing company called Cherry Lane Music at the time, and I introduced them actually to Pokemon because Pokemon didn't have a music publisher, and they stepped up to the plate, gave a big advance to Pokemon for the opportunity, and I was their music guy. And suddenly, when they were doing other shows, they would have me work on it. Like NASCAR was one of my clients, and I worked with NASCAR for about 5 years because of Cherry Lane, because of Pokemon. So it just kept feeding each other.
Yeah,
And then eventually what happened was a big record company came in and bought half of that publishing company, and that was BMG Music.
I heard of it.
And I ended up being kind of consultant and eventually a senior executive at BMG Music and
Okay.
BMG Records. So it all was connected, but all little steps.
Well, let's talk about that. So that I assume is a transition, right? I mean, you went from bartender to jingle writer to show writer to 18 seasons to NASCAR to all these things. Now you're at BMG and this acquisition.
Right.
So, what did you learn about the music industry kind of inside of BMG or inside of that as an executive that most artists never really get to see? Like, what did you see inside of there that's...
No, you're right. Well, it's the other side of the coin. I mean, suddenly,
Sure.
Everybody before just like, I hope the label likes my song, or hope the producer of the show likes my song. And that's pretty much your job. Just write something that they like, right? Now, once you're at the label and you start seeing the responsibility of the company and all the money they're spending to keep these 30, 40 artists, kind of in the studio and marketing their music and figuring out how to sell it, what the trends are, none of which a real songwriter thinks about. You're just thinking about making music. And in fact, it was a lot more fun. It was a lot more fun just going in the studio and making music for an assignment and not worrying about all the other ramifications that you do have to worry about in the studio when you're working for a label. On the other hand, to me, understanding how the whole business works helps me, like today, if whatever new projects I'm working on, now I have all that knowledge about what works and what doesn't work in a label, and what in the music business, as we were just referencing before we were on the podcast, about how the music business now is in transition, which is a nice way of saying it's really overall it's struggling. And I don't think you'd have that understanding unless you've seen it from the record label side and seen sales drop by 300% on a really great album because everybody's streaming the album, which pays a lot less than somebody buying the album. And then you go, uh-oh, there's a problem here. And no one really mentioning it, but clearly there's a problem there. And so the next 10 years of my music career is going to have to be working on what are the solutions.
So just so the audience here understands this, when you have an album and you sell an album, you get some royalty or some piece of that sale for each album sale that you have. So if you sell 1 million records, you get 1 million times whatever that percentage is, or
Yeah,
whatever.
and artists make between $3.50 and I don't know $5 on an out per
Oh,
album.
wow. Okay. So if you sell 1 million, you're bringing in some real dollars that way.
Yeah,
Now we have a streaming model where we have the Spotify's and the Apple Musics and the Amazon Musics and the fill in the blank musics, right? And you're not selling any albums if you're an artist. People are just choosing to play your song, and every time they play it, I assume you get a royalty or something.
0.005 cents.
0.005 cents.
Right. So if somebody told me the number was if you're talking about a single now, I'm not talking about the cumulative out, but if you listen, if your single is listened to by 1 million people on Spotify, I think it translates into $5,000.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
That's a fundamental shift for the artists.
A real shift. In other words, streaming on the whole, unless you're Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran, becomes an amazing opportunity to expose the public to your music, to develop a fan base who then will follow you if you're touring, and suddenly, so now you have then they'll come and spend more money, or the venues you're performing will get bigger and all that. But the actual listening to the music on the streaming service, except for opening doors and making people aware of your music, is not a financial bonanza at all.
So then
a lot of the artists, I mean, an older artist is like dumbfounded because they don't want to tour.
Yeah.
They did a whole new album, but they want to sit back and receive the rewards from this new record, and that's not going to translate.
There are no rewards. It sounds like the compensation model shifts to touring, right? You're making almost all of your money at that point, touring and merch and
and if you're lucky enough to be like a legacy artist, and you have your original catalog, like Paul Simon or James Taylor or the Eagles, and that music, and Pink Floyd is an album that just keeps generating money. I mean, it's a cash cow. But besides streaming billions of listens, it's also those original records are still being sold and resold and repackaged, and people buying the actual albums still.
Is that how it works too? For like, if they choose to use your song in a movie, right? They use a fraction of your song.
If you're lucky enough to have your song in a movie and it's a recognizable song.
Yep.
And it depends the budget it's all dependent on the budget of the movie, but the bigger the budget of the movie, like a Mission Impossible, and you have a song in that, then you can expect to get real great fee for that, for your music to be in that.
So, all right. So break this down for us. So
I'm going to give you the whole music industry in 45 minutes.
I mean, and seriously, in the last 60 seconds, I feel like I understand what's broken.
Yeah.
I mean, this label-driven model where that you're not selling albums anymore. Everything's streamed, and you're getting a fraction of a penny, right? And you have to go build a tour and schedule. So is it broken for the artists? Is it broken for the label? Is it broken?
Yeah, I think it's broken for both. It's broken for both. I mean, the label is in this unfortunate situation because they really sell records. That's still their business.
Sure.
And they got to get on the radio. So, you've all heard stories about how do you get your music on the radio? Well, you have to hire promotion guys, and that's expensive. And you have to do a big marketing campaign, and that's expensive. And you got to pay for the artist to go into the studio with a producer, and that's expensive. And then if the reward for all that is 10 cents or 20 cents on the dollar for most of your artists, in a good situation, because a lot of them can be really flat, then you have to be really picky about which artists you pick. And you have to really kind of be betting on the best producer and the best songs. And I mean, a lot goes into it, but it's very stressful, So it's a scary time, especially if you're in a business of making music rather than just making music as a songwriter.
So, and I imagine the labels, and kind of just super fascinated by this. So the labels were in the business of like being hit makers, going out and finding artists or sourcing artists, and they kind of knew the formula, right? They knew how to go out and produce stuff that the public would want, or maybe would kind of help put it together in such a way based on that. What it feels like now, maybe I'm wrong here, but I see the the Forrest Franks of the world, or some of these people who are TikTok stars, right, or YouTube stars that are building millions of listeners just by making music on a social media platform, right, with no label, just getting off the ground. And then I imagine at some point shipping it to a label or partnering up with one to go to that next
Yeah,
level.
yeah. I mean, I mean, I know it sounds magical and cool, but it's really hard
Sure.
for somebody on their own to suddenly post a song on, on YouTube, a video on YouTube, or start kind of marketing their own music and not using a label. You can have a couple hundred friends that love your music and kind of respond,
Yeah.
but taking that next level, like all big influencers, you have to be really lucky, and everything has to line up in the right way for it to work. You know what I mean?
Makes total sense. So this podcast is about AI. So when I talk to folks every day about how artificial intelligence is impacting the world around us, I mean, AI has to be reshaping the music industry.
Yeah.
There's been stories recently about full-blown AI artists, right, that are just not even real human beings that are getting millions and millions of downloads on Spotify or some of these other tools, right? So I imagine it's shaping how music's created, how it's distributed, how it's discovered. Does this impact kind of the industry in a way? I mean,
Well,
does this solve any of the things?
obviously it does,
For
and
sure.
the truth is, all this is happening. I mean, this whole AI phenomenon has only been really significant and having an impact in the last 9 months. It's not
Wow.
like for 20 years. I mean, I know that the true AI science and technology has been being developed for some time, but now that, like in music, uh, they're taking basically uh, the algorithms take the music that you and 500 John Loefflers were creating, and all the things that work in those songs are then scraped and learned by the algorithm, and then you feed it back, and you're being fed back successful kind of resonating melodies and themes and grooves because it's coming from hits or historically. I mean, it's kind of how really roughly how it works, and so I think human beings still. It's hard for me to believe AI artists, in the way we think of recording artists, would ever be anything more than a tool. In other words, you're at home, and for the first time, if you become really proficient on one of the platforms, then you can fill in a string section, or you can experiment with what type of percussion you want. And rather than having to be in a studio like I did when I started, with 6 guys in the studio, and then you experiment for 4 hours, and it costs you $2,000 just to be in there to do a demo. When suddenly you can experiment at home with some of the best musical ideas, all right there in front of you. I mean, that's pretty fabulous. But I don't believe that it will work. And I'm sure I'm going to be wrong, but I don't believe that without an individual sentiment. Don't forget, the song's got to be about something.
Yeah.
If you're just talking about transparent ear candy music, but just kind of, then I mean, yeah, it can fill airwaves with that stuff. But I personally think, until there has to be a human being who's creative, who's controlling the process or guiding the process, then I think we maybe come up with some unbelievable new combinations of music that no one human being could ever do, which may be amazing. But you have to be driven by someone with a creative instinct. It's just like special effects in a movie. Same thing. I mean, they have unbelievable special effects on, especially the big action films and the Marvel movies and stuff. But if you don't have a director and you don't have a vision, you can have all the tools, but it doesn't mean anything. I have to believe that's the case with AI.
I think that's my belief too. I mean, this podcast is called Authentic and Agentic. So the goal here is to stay human, right? As we lean into AI, I always coach my listeners. It's not about rushing into it and just hoping it works, right? It's about, but also don't just put your head in the sand and pretend it's not here, because AI is here. And your point is exactly right. It's really hit the lexicon over the last 9 months, 9 months. I mean, it's just moving so fast, so quickly, which is wild to think about. One of the things I talked to an attorney recently about the kind of the ownership side of some of that, but also the agency side of it. And so people, I think, you were right on where you said that, the machine learning and the big tech and all that's been around for decades. It's called AI now, and it's, built in a little faster, a little more kind of front and center for humans. But it's not black or white, right? I mean, I would imagine
It's not black or white.
in your whole career, you wrote things, right? But you still had synthesizers and you had some version of
Samples. I had drum programs. Those are all primitive forms, kind of
yeah.
what AI is today. Yeah.
And so because of that, I mean, I'm with you. I don't think that you're going to have songs fully written, recorded, produced, published, pushed, marketed by a bot without a human interacting. But I do think you're going to have some level of like how hard that person. So when I ask the question to a lawyer, like, who owns this, right? How do you define who owns something? If I use AI to do it, do I own it? Does ChatGPT own it because they were I mean, how does that work? And the current answer, and they're still working through court precedents to try to solve this, is it depends on how much effort's really put into it, right? It really depends on how much agency you had in creating the song. If you write the lyrics, if you tell it all the parts and pieces, and you're the maestro, the producer pulling it all together, right? It's your song. And I think that's super interesting.
That seems about right to me too. I mean, and if you just say, make me a 3-minute kind of sexy, romantic, acoustic Latino track or something like that. I don't know. And then you really didn't have anything to do with it except give it an assignment.
Right.
And I don't know who would own that. And if you were to place that as a background music, first of all, I don't know whether you're allowed to, and you probably are. But if you put that as background music on a TV show or a film, who gets credited for it? I really don't know the answer to that. I honestly don't.
Are you seeing,
And
as the market moves, are you seeing more of those kind of like short bursts, some of the stuff that you started your career with?
yeah,
Are you seeing more of that
I
being AI
think
produced or produced in-house?
so. I've been in the last 6 months. I must have gotten 30 phone calls from contemporaries of mine. Most of them are marveling about how unbelievably good some of the stuff is that they've been listening. They're going,
Yeah.
I can't believe this. Then they're all thinking, well, maybe what I should start doing is kind of jump on board and crank out another 200 instrumental tracks using AI and submitting that like in the old days when we were doing music for TV shows, when they had background music besides songs. And I go, yeah, but that's how long is that going to last? And what is the real value? And how do you, I don't know the answer about who really is the
Yeah.
owner of that stuff at
Yeah.
that point. And I don't know. It's exciting to watch how it can do it, but I'm the wrong guy to ask probably because I've been making a living writing and making decisions about melodies and orchestrations and arrangements. So I can marvel at it, but I don't think of it to me as a business opportunity. It just seems like a distraction.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I talk to creatives, I talk to software developers, I talk to a lot of different groups of folks whose direct career path is being enhanced and or challenged, right, by this AI stuff. And I think that your perspective is the healthiest, which is, it exists. It's there's benefit to it. It's marvelous. It's cool. It's interesting. I don't know that there's business models sitting on the other side of it right now.
I don't know if that is either. I mean, even some of those artists that have been recent. There's a country artist, a guy that was completely created, by AI. I mean, handsome guy wearing a cowboy hat. The track is damn good, and the song is damn good, and his voice is damn good, and it's all kind of AI. And you can't help but be impressed. You're going, this is really, really good song and really good music. But who's the guy? What's the story? What's he thinking about? He's no guy. So, it's like, it's cool. I listen to it. It's fun. But do I want to go buy it? Am I going to go to a concert of AI stuff? I don't even know what that looks like. I mean, maybe
I think that's where you lose me. Is I can't imagine going to a concert and watching an AI thing, right? I mean, the whole point of a concert is the live experience and seeing.
Right.
My absolute favorite thing about a concert is when the artist plays a cover or a song that's not in their arsenal. Like, it's really neat to see them kind of just jam or riff or whatever else. And so,
Absolutely. That's why I think the young generation, which I like to see, is really digging live music again and really liking small venues again and really liking, either acoustic interpretations or, like the tiny, the Tiny Desk. Is that what it is? Or
Tiny Desk Music.
and it's like everybody just wants to go back to the basics. And I know if I'm driving around the car, and if I have Sirius on, for example, I'll put coffee. They have coffee house music or something like that, because most of that stuff is stripped down. And to me, I'm hearing a voice maybe I've never heard before. I'm hearing some interpretations of some old classics, but done in a new way, or maybe a new song, and I get charged by that.
Yeah.
But if I'm just hearing a slick, overproduced track that probably had 20 writer, producer, arrangers, compressors, who knows what's going on in that whole session? It all sounds the same, and flattens the experience, because you're getting the best of everybody. It's all thrown into one thing. And nothing really nothing comes out with personality or kind of anything that kind of draws you in person to person. So I don't know.
Well, and that's where AI is never going to win, that personality piece, right? I love certain artists because of their story, right? How they got off the ground and where they got there and how they came. I mean, a part of Taylor Swift's appeal is that she just went to Nashville and did the thing, right? As a young person, and she's a female, and she bucked the industry, and she did all the big things. I mean, that's why people love that, I think, is that
And she remains a dedicated songwriter.
unbelievable.
And even in her last work, she's not trying to be a pop artist anymore. She now realizes she's lucky enough to have the opportunity to write and explore poetic themes in ways maybe a pop artist wouldn't do if they're just first breaking on the scene. And she's going to have a great career because she always seems to make good, healthy decisions. She's not being sucked into the whole thing. And she has the benefit of social media really coming together at that moment. So every young girl, 13, 14 years old in the United States, because of the power of social media, all loved her at the same time. And suddenly she had an army of young fans, wherever she went. And that's ammunition for doing lots of good stuff.
Absolutely.
If you're a good artist and a responsible artist, which she is.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot to admire there. I have one more question before I ask you about some advice for the next generation, but this is something that popped up. So I do these workshops where I go around and teach people about AI and show them the benefits of how they can use it to increase their productivity and all these sorts of things. And so one of the things I like to do is I like to pull up one of these songwriting apps and just make a quick song in front of them, just short prompt like the one you gave earlier, right? And just throw it in and then just see what happens. And if you've never seen it or experienced it before, it's mind-blowing. These are radio quality level songs that come out in 2 minutes, and it's wild how this sort of stuff works. And
and it's exciting for the person who's giving it the assignment. They go, "Oh my God, I actually just created a song." Well, you didn't really, but you kind of did. And it's good.
I use it just to show people. I use it to show people, kind of blow their minds with what AI is doing today, right? Just as a way to kind of level set and say, you guys in the room might be using ChatGPT to ask it some questions or to help you, clean up an email, but watch this. And I just show it to them, right? Well, one of the guys in one of my recent workshops asked this question. He said, so when you write a song, if you're a young kid writing a song using this tool, do you still want to learn how to play the guitar or learn how to play the piano? Or do you just get into this habit of typing a prompt in and hitting enter, right? And that really paused me for a bit and made me think about it. Like, are we losing the soft skills, the skills, the hard, the stuff that takes forever to learn, right? I mean, that's the hard stuff. And I wonder.
20 years of practicing. Yeah,
that's right. And I wonder if that. I don't even know where to go.
It's a really good question. I have to believe there's going to be diminishing musicians who want to focus on learning how to play a piccolo or wanting to be an amazing double bass player, when all you got to do is kind of give it the instructions. But even when I was doing stuff with just synths and stuff like that, you could put a different bass line sound and you could be off to the races. But you still had to play it. You still had to figure out where it fit into the music track. And listen, there's still young kids who want to be drummers, but when drum machines came up, and suddenly all these, which were captured sounds from some major drummers and major rooms and with atmosphere around the sound of the drum, I have to believe less kids were becoming drummers, because it was already so available to a producer in a session without necessarily having, a new drummer play it. The guys who were on the top they continued to work. But I don't know, and I think it's a concern, no question about it.
Yeah, I'll I'll play devil's advocate for 10 seconds where I think about how if you can become more productive in your day job by using some of these tools, it does free up some opportunity for the fun things, right?
Mhm.
And so I do have a lot of friends that are, able to work less because they're more efficient, right, than they used to be, and they can still get the same outcome or even more done with less time. And now they're finding that, I mean, I think of like woodworkers, right? Like there's no reason to be a woodworker to go like carve things out of wood unless you just love it. And
Mhm.
it's not efficient. I mean, you can go buy stuff at IKEA cheaper than you could make it, but man, it's a skill, right? It's something that people really
And
choose
a very satisfying skill, right?
and so my hope is that I think it'll be kind of a roller coaster or maybe even a paradigm back and forth, like a pendulum, I mean, where it's hopefully, even though it's easier, there will be people that are deliberate, that choose to care and choose to learn these instruments and do these sorts of things. And, we'll see where that goes. But I do want to kind of end with this. Um, I always like to ask folks about advice for that next generation. So if you were advising a young musician or producer or composer that's coming up today, right? You're meeting with someone at a bar in New York today who
Right.
moved to the city and wants to do this as their career. What would you encourage them to lean into, right? I mean, AI is becoming part of everything. The labels are broken, as you've explained. What do you tell somebody in that space?
Well, first of all, before having a sense of what the quality of the music they're capable of making, because that's a big difference. When
Yeah, for
people
sure.
send me still tapes of examples of their music, I mean, I can tell right away whether somebody actually has the skills to possibly develop into becoming a professional or not. I also say, you should think in broader terms about being a musician. I said, what do you like about music? Do you like actually playing the instrument? Do you like the idea of writing this song, or do you like the idea of being in this environment that's creating original creative content and you're part of it and that's very exciting? And for a lot of musicians, I think it's the latter. They just like being in this room. They like making this music. They've contributed something. But I think, like I just needed to be I had to be in that room. I had to be around other creative people making cool stuff, whatever it was. And had I met somebody after 5 years of making music, maybe who was an amazing film editor, and he taught me how to edit films, I might have segued over to editing films. But at least I wouldn't be dissatisfied. I just knew that I was kind of following my creative impulses to be creative. And if someone really wants to be a musician and is a little flexible, like I didn't want to do jingles when I came to New York, and yet that ended up opening a door for a big career for me. But if you're flexible and you really are passionate about it, you definitely should pursue it. But if someone's coming to you at a bar and says, I'm thinking about it, or my son's thinking about it, but he doesn't know, should he go to law school? I go, I can't answer that.
Yeah.
If you don't have the drive to do it, I would say the odds are pretty good that you shouldn't do it.
That's wisdom right there.
It's a tough world out there. You gotta like come guns blazing if you wanna succeed.
Well, especially if you're young. I mean, you can go all in, and if it doesn't work, you can pursue the other thing after, right? I mean,
and not be disappointed. You did it. You gave it your all. You kind of put 7 years into it, and then if it doesn't work, you've learned something. Trust me, and then you can do that. Leads to something else.
Well, and we talk a lot about that. One of my biggest fears with AI is just I think we're going to lose some grit along the way. I think that because things are becoming easier to do, we may try less hard, if that makes sense. And I think exactly what you said there. I mean, you got to be willing to go put in the work. And so that's really, really cool. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time for me. This has been a super fun conversation. How do people find you? If people want to follow along, get connected, pursue, like how do they get hold of you?
I'm very available and very willing to talk to people and or give advice.
Yeah.
I'm always willing to listen. I do it all as part of my day. I listen to other people's music and oftentimes give feedback and give some advice. I can't do that full time,
Sure.
But I would be very happy to help and collaborate, maybe even with you if people want to go through you and reach out to me, or you reach out to me with some examples. I'd be happy to do that.
How can I ask this question? Is there anything in your current career, current trajectory, current process that you're looking for? Are you trying to find artists in specific places or spots?
I am at the moment. I feel like since I have partners in a studio here in New York. I'm still in New York City, and I'm in the middle of the music business. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
even though I'm maybe not running a record label, but I'm still in it. And I think that part of it is not the problem. The problem that I'm focusing on right now is a little bit is what's the new model? What's the new platform? What's the way that if you make good music, that you're going to be rewarded appropriately? And what's the way that young musicians can make a living and kind of make a good living if they're really talented? And there's lots of, that's a whole different conversation. I've been spending a lot of time working on that and thinking about it. I think I have some ideas, and there's going to be other smart people coming up with ideas too. But I think there's going to be a revolution, as it were, of kind of new content delivery systems, so people can enjoy music and be rewarded for it, not just through record sales and not just through getting on the radio.
Love that. Absolutely love that. And wish you the best in that process. Keep me in the loop. So as you pursue that, if there's anything.
Definitely. We'll come back together and we'll talk about it.
That sounds awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Great talking to you, Jason.
Cheers, John.
Bye.
Thanks again to John for joining me on this podcast episode. And thanks for listening. I know there were a couple of kind of glitchy moments with the Zoom call, just with bandwidth and such, as we were trying to do a call from his studio in New York. And I'm here in my podcast studio in Noblesville. And I'm sure with all the weather challenges and everything else that have been going on, it's just part of the process. But really grateful for him for taking the time. A lot of wisdom there, man. What a fun conversation, just learning how one kind of grows into that space in that industry. What success can look like. And really, man, he's exactly right. There are some major issues that industry has to solve. It's a weird time. AI is making things a weird time for creatives and for folks that are, good at that space. And so I'm just really grateful for his wisdom and his perspective on some of that. And I thank him for doing that. If you have never seen kind of this automated song building piece of AI, jump over to my YouTube channel. You can get there by going to jasonmanship.com or go to YouTube and search Jason Manship. It's Jayson Manship, just like it sounds. Search that, find my channel, the Authentic and Agentic channel. And I have a video there that shows you how you can write songs using AI. And the reason for this isn't to replace any creatives or anything else. I just want to show you how crazy this technology is. John and I alluded to it in the conversation, but how fast you can write a song, right? And what that means and what that does. And so check it out. Go over there. I'll show you how to do it. And you can play with it yourself if you want to, but just follow along. But I thought it'd be kind of a fun thing to see. So appreciate y'all joining me this week. Thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe. We have a couple of monster episodes coming up. Next week, we are talking to the folks at the Institute for Ethics and Good at the University of Notre Dame. These folks just got a $50 million grant to study AI ethics with a Christian worldview. Super excited for that conversation. It's going to be a very, very, very kind of philosophical discussion, and I'm very excited for that. And so subscribe so you get notified when that goes live. And then in a couple of weeks, I have the crazy cool opportunity to sit down with the CTO and the head of AI for a little organization here in Indianapolis called Eli Lilly. So Lilly is leading globally the AI race as it relates to pharma and healthcare. And they are actively partnering with some of the biggest companies in the world to do crazy cool stuff. And so join me here on the Authentic and Agentic podcast. Subscribe, tell your friends, listen up. Hopefully you enjoyed this conversation with John, and I'm excited for you to hear the Notre Dame and the Lilly conversations coming up. Till next week. Cheers.